of the whole big package.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it wasn't the thing that set it off.
Mm-hmm. So direct to consumer medical marketing, just part of a larger scheme.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we could talk about that shift.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think we are up and live. Yeah, she has some cute dogs. Her baby dog.
He had to get his pet duck.
Of course.
How long does a pet duck last?
The squeaker gets ripped out within like a day, and then it's sort of a deflated mess, but he still loves it.
Well, today we're live with Jennifer Lahl, filmmaker and writer and speaker. Jennifer Lahl, founder of the Center for Bioethics and Culture. And we had the opportunity to talk a few months back. I actually can't remember exactly when that was. It's several months back, maybe even last year in the fall or early spring this year. And it was a really good conversation. You helped me to understand some of the ethical questions around surrogacy. And that was kind of where our conversation focused that time. And I don't know where we'll focus this time, but I'm delighted to have you and have a conversation around medical ethics and some of the work that you're doing. Great. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure.
Deborah, would you like to start us off with the intro to Solid Ground, and then we can jump in?
Yes. Solid Ground is a peer support community for anyone concerned about the imposition of critical social justice and/or authoritarian measures such as COVID mandates in their workplace, university, children's school, or community. We offer online peer support groups in which members share ideas, thoughts, and support for how to navigate the impact of these ideologies and answer the question, where do we go from here? You can join one of our groups for only $5 per month. To find out how to join our community, please visit solidgroundsupport.com. And please note, Solid Ground does not provide psychotherapy or legal advice, and nothing we do should be construed as such.
Thanks, Deborah. Hi to Ninja Kitty and Helena and James from Bahia in the chat. Ninja Kitty says, hello, Jennifer. So many Jens, Jennifers, and Jennies. And Jenny Holland can't be with us today. She's doing something else. So hopefully she'll be back with us next week. She was sad to miss the opportunity to speak with you, Jennifer. We do have Jennifer was the most popular name of the 1970s. And so anybody born around the 1970s, just before and just after, you got a lot of Jennifer. In fact, my first name is Jennifer too. So we are overrepresented.
We have to do some equity and moves.
Yeah. Yeah. In the name of equity, I'm a Leslie. So. I'll try to call Jennifer friend Jen today, since we usually call you Jen anyway. Jennifer, you were just mentioning before we went live, a few things that you're working on right now, including a paper that's in peer review. And you want to kind of just take us on an overview of the work that you're doing at this time?
Yeah, I've spent a lot of my professional work in the space of assisted reproductive technology. Helping people have babies that are infertile, helping men have babies, designing babies, the whole gamut. And when I found out as an ex-pediatric nurse that before children are put on puberty blockers and or cross-sex hormones, they're offered fertility preservation. So they're offered, would you like to freeze and bank your egg or sperm because we're going to destroy your fertility? And then if and when you grow up and you decide you want to have children, you could have a child that's genetically half related to you. And that's when I thought, oh my gosh, what the hell are we doing? So two colleagues of mine have taken on the task of writing a lengthy paper, because fertility preservation, while a lot of things start out as good, right? It started out as a good technique that we could help endangered species. So a certain species is going to become extinct, but we can take their gametes, their egg and their sperm, freeze them, and we can produce more of that, animal. All sounds good, right? Yeah, we don't want species to go extinct. Then we thought, well, what about cancer patients? Before you have chemotherapy and radiation, and for particular cancers, your fertility might be destroyed or harmed. So we moved into, humans offering fertility preservation for, men and women. Then we thought, well, what about children who have cancers? kids get cancer too. So should we offer fertility preservation? So we look at the research, we look at the data in that demographic. And fertility preservation techniques is a very mixed bag. So it's not something you just want to celebrate and say, yes, it works, everybody should do it. And it's a mixed bag because of all the underlying problems. If you're a cancer patient, one, you might die. Even though you have chemo and radiation, it might not be successful. Your body might be in a state after chemo and radiation that you still can't get pregnant, even though you've frozen and banked your sperm. And then we looked at the pediatric population of cancer patients, and we only found 3 cases in the medical literature where it was successful with young girls. And one of the young girls actually had to use IVF in order to conceive and have a baby. And we found no cases documented in the pediatric male population of young boys that were able to go on and successfully conceive. Now, the unknown is the N. So of the 3 girls, how many young girls that were cancer patients froze their eggs? Was it 1,000? Was it 3? Was it a million? There was no reference to that 3. But we can say that it's really not something you should be celebrating as a really successful option. So when we found out that these young children, before their puberty is blocked or they're put on cross-sex hormones, they're offered this. Well, as a patient, when your doctor offers you something, you naturally should be able to assume, well, he's offering it because it works.
Mm-hmm.
He's offering it because, why else would he offer this? And in fact, and even in the CAS report, CAS recommends a standardization of fertility preservation so that it's standardized how it's offered, how the informed consent. And I don't know, I don't want to speak for Dr. Cass, but I kind of want to say maybe she didn't do the research we did, because she's basically saying, if we're going to offer it, let's standardize how we offer it. And so that's a paper that is pretty close to being through the peer review process. It went through 1 round. We made all the changes that the reviewers asked for. They weren't, unreasonable. And so we're hopeful that that will actually see the light of day and, in a medical journal publication soon, which I think will be really helpful in detransition people that are, litigating cases. I wasn't told that my fertility was going to be destroyed. I wasn't told that I was going to be a patient for life and also a patient for life because I'm going to have to interact with fertility medicine if I want to have children, all those things. So, and I think it will be important because I don't think anybody's ever done this kind of research and looking in and raising these kind of questions. So, the journal that's publishing it, if it gets published, was very excited about it. I thought this was a really important, piece of information to add to this whole gender debate. So, and I have just recently written a paper that I think will come out in Lisbon, Portugal, which is the next GenSpec conference, which was commissioned by Stella O'Malley to look at medical ethics, specifically in the transgender space. So, and that is my passion, because nobody's going to get their puberty blocked if not for a doctor. Nobody's going to get cross-sex hormones if not for a doctor. Nobody's going to get sexual reassignment surgery if not for a doctor. We can blame things on therapists. We can blame things on attorneys. We can blame things on hospital, administrators that, like we're suing Kaiser Permanente out here in California, and everybody at Kaiser being sued, the psychiatrist, the plastic surgeon, the hospital, and on and on. But at the end of the day, it's the doctor that actually is signing off and doing this and prescribing and, so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you say that nobody would do this but for the doctor, this is something that I've thought quite a bit, especially around gender, is that there seems to be 2 things really happening. One is this teenage trend, this adolescent trend that kids are thinking this is cool. They're kind of playing with identity and this is the way they're doing it. And that's been the way kids have done adolescence for many generations, at least for the last several generations that we can remember. They do things that seem ridiculous and infuriating to the adults, but it's a code that they all speak and understand, and let kids be kids is kind of one part of it. But then there's this very real threat that there are adults who have the power to reify these imaginings of these kids, and that threat hangs over this process. Like, we could take this and make it and do something permanent to you on the basis of your teenage adolescent identity play. But there's so much more in what you're talking
and you're
about.
destroying health.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you're destroying health. I mean, you can make the case, again, using the pediatric cancer patient population. These are children that have a life-threatening illness. And so we have to treat them. And so, and knowing that their fertility might be damaged, we could offer this as long as we're telling them there's no guarantee, it may not work, but we know we have to treat this patient population. The transgender patient, there's nothing wrong with them. They don't have a life-threatening illness. They have normal, healthy fertility, normal, healthy functioning bodies. And so it's not, the same thing. It's two different cases where you have to say, if the role, for me, the role of medicine is always the goal, the ends, the purpose of medicine is aimed at the health of a patient, whether that be their mental health or their physical health. And in the case of a transgender patient, there's nothing wrong with their medical health. Their body functions perfectly well and normal. I mean, you always worry when you say normal, when it's normal, but normal is like, eyes are supposed to see, ears are supposed to hear, kidneys make urine,
Yeah.
So normal function. And, why are doctors doing that? We could talk about why they are.
Yeah. Well, and there's the threat of suicidality is the kind of the leverage that's being used in order to validate all of this, is that it's a life-saving care because the patients in this particular area have such volatile feelings about themselves, and that they could just off themselves from the pain of what they're experiencing. And that seems to fly in the face of all other kinds of medical and psychological treatments that we would offer. It's like negotiating with terrorists, I'm going to kill myself if you don't do this for me. And where else do we ever use that in order to justify something? Go ahead, Deborah.
I know, I think like even a drug addict, like if someone said, like, if you don't give me my fix, right, like I'm going to kill, they just wouldn't go, fine, we'll give you a bunch of heroin. Well, actually they do in some cities.
They do now.
But a doctor I don't know how much a doctor would get involved in it. Maybe they are getting involved in that too. But your average person would look at that and go, that's crazy to be doing that.
Yeah. Back in my nursing days, I occasionally would float and work shifts in the emergency department. And, we kept names on file of known drug seekers that would make their way through various ERs, coming in with I've got so much pain, I've got this, whatever. And we would get calls over the emergency line from local police departments that so-and-so's drug seeking, 6'2" man. These are the complaints he's looking for, and so we were on to all these people and we never caved. We would never cave and say, oh yeah, we're going to, they're going to kill themselves, so we're going to give them their narcotics and send them on their way. We had that kind of hard and fast, but again, because we were aimed at the health of the patient, the health and the well-being of the patient, and to prescribe narcotics to a known drug abuser or drug addict is not aimed at the health of that patient.
Yeah, it seems like there's a thread that unites a lot of the issues that we've been discussing around bioethics, we had a really great conversation about abortion last week, which went all over the place. It was really nuanced and complex. It's a complex topic, and I appreciated the depth with which everybody engaged with that topic. It's so often seen as a black and white thing, but a lot of these things are not black and white. There's a lot of complexity to all of these issues. And it seems like there is a thread that runs all the way from abortion to medical assistance and dying, like this interesting medicalization of the process of life and death.
Yeah. Well, even if you read the ancient Hippocratic Oath, the original one, there's so many watered down versions of it now that include things as climate change and, DEI and stuff like that. But, the original oath mean, Hippocrates was what, how many years BC? 200, 400, I don't remember right now. But, he even mentioned abortion and, assisted suicide.
Did he
So these
really?
aren't new issues. These are not
Wow.
new things that, yeah, the ancient oath says, I will not, even if, I think he says, even if asked.
Wow.
Yeah.
They spelled it
So,
out.
and those, of course, are those, yeah. I mean, and it says, the oath says, I will not sleep with a patient, so the oath speaks to patient-doctor confidentiality.
Mhm.
But the bottom line is the oath speaks, I will never go into a home, because they didn't have hospitals back then or doctor's office. I will never go into the home of a patient with the intent to do anything that will harm them.
Mhm.
It will always be to preserve, correct, their health. It's aimed at health. It's aimed at health. It's aimed at normal, healthy bodily function.
Mhm.
And then the psychiatrist obviously is focused more on the health of the emotional, the mental health of the patient.
Mhm. Mhm. That's really fascinating that was in the original oath. And Deborah, you brought up something right before we went to live stream about transhumanism. You used the word transhumanism. Can you bring that thread back in, what you were
Yeah, let
talking
me think about
there?
how I would kind of weave it in here. I guess the way I sort of think about it, and it does tie to what we're just saying, because here we're talking about the oath. It seems like there's some respect in the oath for some sort of natural process, natural ways the body goes, not tinkering in there. And then with transhumanism, it seems as though there's a project of we can tinker, we could improve over nature, we can mess with this, DNA, this, that, or the other thing, and somehow like make something better that somehow gets us out of this. I guess they think they're reducing suffering, or out of the cycle of dying, or dying sooner, or enhancing our external appearance, or whatever the case may be. And so it seems like a lot of these things, whether it's transgender or whatever, or some means of, we've got the technology, right? We can just, or even design your baby. I mean, those things freak me out too. Like, let's pick, these good genes and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, we in the early days of the Center for Bioethics and Culture, we hosted 2 conferences on transhumanism. It was called The Face of the Future, Techno Sapiens was our series. And, we invited Nick Bostrom, who was then the founder of the World Transhumanist Movement. And, and there's, just as in every movement, there's like the people that are on the extremes, and then there's sort of the more moderate mainline people. But I've talked with people that are really want to live as virtual beings. No body, nothing material anymore. Our brains are all networked in the neural network in the cloud, and or just. But the transhumanist is sort of like, we're all tinkerers, right? We're all builders, we're all, and the transhumanist view is that we will overcome our humanity. We will never die. We'll just be one more upgrade or upload or one more advancement, so we'll overcome our immortality, which I think is hubris. We always make these grand statements that we're going to win this war, we're going to battle this, or, and here we are still, getting sick and old, and the whole, life extensions, the Methuselah Project, the people that want to just live, keep extending life. But, when you look at normal human development, the age extension only extends old age.
That's right.
You don't extend so a toddler is a toddler for 20 years.
That's right.
You're not a teenager for 25 years. You're not a young adult. You're still going to move through infancy, toddler, pre-adolescent, adolescent, young adult, and then your extension is just for years and years and years. You're going to live as an old person, because we can't overcome normal human development. And there's something about technology. It's always seen, progress is always seen as good. And this is one of those champions that, this is progress, which people go, oh, progress, that means it's good. But not even appealing to me.
Yeah, Jen, you're shaking your head.
Oh yeah, I was I was thinking about that the other day, that because I keep seeing all this stuff on Twitter about extending your life. And I have no interest in that because of that exact thing that you just said, Jennifer. It's not like we're going to extend your life and you're going to get to be in your 30s for 4 decades. No, you're going to be in your 70s, your 80s, your 90s, and then 100 plus. That is not appealing to me at all. I already have enough health stuff going on and I'm healthy, but in my late 50s, I have no interest in extending my life. I'd like to aim for improving the quality of my life and keeping as much functionality and mobility for as long as possible. But just quantity, I would not aim for.
So if it were that,
and that's the role of good medicine, is to make sure that as you age, you are as healthy as you can possibly be at whatever that age is. You can still walk, you can still hear, you can still see, whatever. You might have to wear glasses or hearing aids or use a walker or something, but it's aimed at health. It's not aimed at let's keep you on this earth for as long as we possibly can.
So I can't help but wonder something, and what all of the medicalization of life, it's that zeros and ones thing, Deborah, that you mentioned. We are meat Legos, and we have, we can be understood in these. I mean, even just stage theories and theories of human development. They're correct, but they're also easy. It's easy to over apply generalizations, and that's kind of what identity politics does too. It's this very, we're going to take an aggregate and then we're going to distill that down to an individual. So we over apply empiricism and sciencism and technology to the human experience. Is there any room for the spirit, for the soul, for the individual in all of this? And is there a spiritual reason why it's not good to tinker with life in this way? Does anybody think about that? Or is that just such an antiquated and bizarre thing to say in this world of trust the science?
And I can just speak for myself. And again, it's completely subjective, though. I mean, I imagine I could go find spiritual texts to support whatever. But even just reviewing your interview with Jennifer, and then I quickly watched Breeders, your Breeders video, like on 2X. There's a visceral saying. And even when I first heard about like genetically modified food, I'm one of those people that had a visceral like violation horror sensation in my body. But then other people go, you're not being logical. It's all fine. And I'm fine if you took like, you're a little farmer and you mixed a couple of like pollen from some plants, because that kind of happens. But I have a really horrifying bodily experience thinking about these things that we're up to. Like, it just feels super, like, I even struggle with IVF. I mean, I know people have had their kids that way. And I remember when I first heard it, I just felt like that egg is not in a body. What's that psychologically going to do? Like, it's like, isn't that weird? Like, what is that? We don't really know entirely what that does. And I know people have had kids that way and they love their kids and their kids are great. But I like something about it, just removing these things from where they normally go in ways we don't even entirely understand, as though we could just kind of like break it into pieces, like Leslie was saying. I don't know if it was a coherent statement, but anyway.
I want to say something about that, but I want to say something about Leslie's comment too. I mean, we are body and soul. I mean, we at our own peril, become dualistic. We become, Gnostic. We become, that these are separate things, and we are embodied human beings. We're so I think there is an element of mystery. I think good physicians understand that. Because most of my nursing was pediatrics, and in pediatrics in California, you have Asian families, you have Hispanic families, you have people that are Roma families from the Roma, the Gypsies. You have to deal with so many different cultures. And so you see how those cultures play in a spiritual element. And you would go into a child's room in the hospital, and maybe it was a Hispanic family, and there'd be pictures of Mary everywhere and rosaries hanging on the crib, and they wouldn't let them light candles because it was a hospital, but all those kind of icon images. When we would have, I would always know when I walked into the hospital, if we had a Roma family, because they all come, the whole entire community comes. It's not like mom and dad are there or mom's there with the baby. And, we'd have to, literally, you would know when you went down to the cafeteria to buy your lunch on your break, because you would have to ask for everything. I need a napkin, I need a fork, I need ketchup, I need, because the cafeteria workers would have to put it all away, because if it's out, just take 2 napkins, everything would go.
Oh, wow.
But that is the cultural element, as well as meeting the the health medical needs of the child. But you have to deal with we would have Jewish patients that depending on what kind of Jewish tradition, they wouldn't allow their child to be an organ donor, or they would allow, so you have to accommodate for all those. You can't just ignore all that and treat us all the same. We're just taking care of your body. We're just taking care of, this cancer that you have growing in you. You have to take care of the whole body and soul, and that's good medicine. But you're aiming at the health. You don't allow, we would have to navigate with Jehovah Witness, who didn't allow children to have blood transfusions. And sometimes if there was a trauma and the child needed blood transfusions, occasionally we would have to go to the courts. We would have to go to the judge and say, we need to use plasma because it wasn't whole blood. Or we could just give a lot of IV fluids that were more volume fluids versus just, like a dextrose fluid or something. So we would have to accommodate these, spiritual elements to provide health and care for the patients. And then I forgot what I was going to say to you, Deborah. Sorry.
Well, one of the things that occurred to me when Jen was talking about the extension of life was that, yeah, we're probably talking about prolonging life at the end, but also what if we were talking about prolonging the period of time, like, the saying, like 40 is the new 30 or whatever, where we do have this sense that we've in some ways we've extended our lifespan from what our ancestors would have had, that the wear and tear on our bodies is less by a certain age, so that we're still able to really function as youthful throughout a longer period of middle age, say. I mean, I'm almost 50 and I feel pretty good. I feel like I don't know what that was supposed to look like, but I feel pretty good. I have a sense that I'm young. 50 is younger than I thought it was going to be. I'm 48. It feels younger than I thought. And I think that a lot of us have that sort of sense that we have extended that. But if if you're doing that through natural processes, through eating better and through just having less hardship that takes a physical toll on your life because we've improved our living circumstances, our cleanliness and hygiene and whatnot, then that seems like a positive. But at what point are we using technology? And one of the things I think of is plastic surgery, which this speaks directly to the transgender medicine phenomenon, which is sex trait modification through plastic surgery and through chemical modification, like the hormone therapies and whatnot. But there's this, when was it, like the 80s, 90s, you started to see a lot of women who'd had a lot of work done, and it was becoming more and more obvious. One of the things I noticed is it's not necessarily making a person look younger, it's just making a person look modified. Like, there's some things that do make you look younger, like to an extent, but there's a point at which you're Madonna and you've just made yourself into something very strange, right? I don't know, I'm rambling now, but
the wind tunnel look, when you're like, you've had so much plastic surgery, you look like your face is blowing back.
Yep. Not that that's not appealing sometimes when things start to sag, but yeah.
Well,
what are we doing when we do
I
this?
addressed that in the paper that's coming out with.
Having a little bit of a feed issue there. Let's see. Jennifer's cutting out a little bit.
A little frozen.
Yeah. Maybe she'll come back in. I'll send her a message in the chat if you guys want to
Yeah, we're having a storm here. I don't know if you noticed, but my room got really dark all of a sudden. So I got up and turned on a light. I was like, oh my God, in a few more minutes, you're not going to be able to see me unless I turn on a light.
You froze on me.
I thought you were in a mood, like a weird mood.
Yeah, it's like, so I was just like, oh God, am I going to lose power? I don't know. Yeah, we're having a summer storm.
I see Jen and Deborah clear are coming in really nice and clear for me and moving really well. And then Jennifer Lahl, your internet is kind of glitching. Okay, she dropped out. She'll probably be back in a minute, but we can continue the chat.
Yeah.
And then and when she's able to get back on, we'll bring her back in. Yeah, the idea of like the soul, I think this is so interesting because it's really hard to know how to talk about it because we don't talk in that way in our culture now. We have this empiricism and science is the way we go.
You know, and I think what's tricky about it, to some extent, I would say some of the transgender stuff is I feel like there's this attempt to get at, because they'll say I have a gendered soul, right? It's like I feel like that, like there at one place people were actually talking about a soul, but then they're doing it in a way that we're kind of feeling is potentially like harmful. But I feel like somewhere they were trying to capture maybe something that we can't seem to talk about that much unless, you know, people are comfortable with a more, you know, spiritual, religious conversation.
Yeah. Jennifer, welcome back. Maybe we'll get
getting kicked out.
Yeah, we've had your internet seems glitchy. The video is a little glitchy. Audio's mostly been pretty good, but the video's been.
And we want to trust our lives to technology.
Right.
No.
Yeah, for sure. Now I remember something, Jennifer, that you mentioned when we spoke, and I don't know if
turn off my camera.
Maybe give that a try for a little bit. Maybe give it a try.
Should I turn off?
Yeah, give it a try. Let's see what happens. See.
Oops.
Yeah. Internet. I mean, yeah, that's a great point. Do we really want to trust our lives to technology? And that's so this I have a question that ties into what we were just talking about, and I hope Jennifer can pop back in, but maybe you guys can weigh in on it too, or so one of the things that's been one of my biggest qualms with transgender care, gender affirming care, is that the technology is not very good, that there's such a high rate of side effects with this stuff. And you hear these terrible stories that are all too common of people really suffering physical consequences of the procedures that they do. But what if we were able to get that ironed out? What would be the issue then? Is there still an issue then? And that's kind of a question that I have around that for in medical ethics. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Well, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Mostly.
Yeah, it's still.
Mostly. Want to give it a try?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh,
she's having trouble.
You can hear me?
We can hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of going around.
Yeah.
No, I should be doing this all.
It's okay. You know, I have this happen sometimes with mostly with recordings.
Oh.
And it can be such a pain when this happens. But yeah. Let's say yes. So did Jennifer or Deborah, you want to take that while she gets on?
Okay, so yeah, let me reiterate if I remember. So it was like, say these procedures, especially the surgeries, I'm imagining, kind of ended up sort of being without a hitch. People could just go along and not have some sort of lifetime constantly having to go and get a new surgery and all this. Like, would we be okay with it?
Would there still be a problem?
We couldn't make the argument that it's damaging, right? So that argument's out the window. So then it does come back to that. Then it becomes a little bit more of either a spiritual argument, or a consideration around like transhumanism, like just modifying ourselves, like then is it just plastic surgery? What do we feel about the value of just getting to just do that sort of thing and not living and making peace with ourselves as we are? So I think it just becomes more maybe of a spiritual question. And like, again, like what is it to be human? And are we trying to transcend that? Or are we okay with it? But then you just don't have the excuse. It's helpful almost now to go, this is just really harmful for people, right? Like that gives it extra oomph to make an argument against it because it's so obviously fraught with a lot of problems.
Yeah. Jennifer, are you coming in clear now?
I hope so. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfectly. Wonderful.
Oh, great. Sorry about this. I obviously I missed some stuff, but I want to comment on what you said, Leslie. What if we could, do transgender surgeries and, remove all the risk and all the negative? Well, first, that just sort of means that we have to keep doing it the way we're doing it, trial and error, to find a better way, which means we're using people as guinea pigs, which I think has huge problems ethically. To say, well, we're going to try a new phalloplasty technique on you. So you're going to be the first one to see if this works. Oh, it didn't work. We're going to have to go back to the drawing board. But I think I always like to start at the very beginning instead of in the middle of these kind of discussions. And for me, the very beginning is, should we even be doing this at all? Should we be, living under the illusion that we can change our bodies so that a male becomes a woman or a woman becomes a male? I think again, that's a kind of a hubristic endeavor, and you'll just have a lot of injured, harmed bodies along the way as you take off doing this. Part of our problem as people, we don't like suffering, and we've become really soft. And so people that don't want to do the hard work on becoming comfortable with how they were born or created want a quick fix. And, medicine has been happy to jump on the quick fix. Oh, you're an old woman. You don't like your saggy jawline or whatever. We can fix everything. There's a fix. So how do we, as just people in general, make peace with the fact that we are frail, people that we're not perfect? Why do we have to aim for perfect and being what we want to be, our true self, whatever that means? I'm so sick of our true self and self-care and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, the true self, that seems to be a big part of this. It's like Deborah was saying about the gendered soul. And the idea that we are some fixed thing that we can identify by looking at ourselves long enough. And it seems like that's just a path towards the tale of Narcissus, and this ever deeper quest to modify ourselves or to see ourselves the way we want to see ourselves through focusing on the self and trying to find a true self.
Yeah, and I think I probably heard stories or even worked with people that no matter what they fix, then they find something else to be uncomfortable with. When I made the film, The Detransition Diaries, which was focused on young women who transitioned and detransitioned, I say those words in quotes. Grace was a classic example. As soon as she had her double mastectomy, she said, I looked down at my hips and I had, curvy hips. And like, those are not boy hips. And she goes, what do I need? Hip surgery now? And then she realized that there would be no bottom. And you see that with plastic surgery. These women, the next thing you know, you don't even recognize them. Their lips become like so huge and their eyebrows are up in their hairline, because they just have to keep, satisfying that quest to become whatever it is they're trying to become. And again, doctors are happy to play that game and, laugh all the way to the bank.
And it seems like, especially if people might have a tendency towards, say, like OCD or something like that come into this, then there would be that just obsessive hook on, it's not quite right. My Adam apple is sticking out too much, like the other way, say male to female too, right? Like I need a shoulder shape, like something like that. And then it would just really hook into a pre-existing mental pattern of not being satisfied.
So how do we get medicine on to stop being so mercenary? I mean, how is there a path back, or is the genie out of the bottle and it's just, you've got these people with knives that are willing to do whatever you want for money?
Yeah, I'm the forever optimist. So I think it's going to be, a society will have to change, as well as medicine. I mean, we have become now very much, service minded. We don't see our doctor as a professional anymore. He's a technician. I just show up and say, I want this, I want that, I want this. It's very consumerish. It's very, medicine has become corporatized. It's become politicized. No longer is a profession in the old school sense of what is a profession, where the members of the profession guide the practice of it. It's become politicized and corporatized. So I think it's going to be, all of that. It's going to have to demand. But for me, it starts first with the doctors, because they're at the end, at the end of the day, they're the ones doing this. And so I like what happened in Florida with, they didn't get the American Academy of Pediatrics to change practice, but the Florida, medical bodies, the professional, bodies in Florida said, this is not how we're going to take care of these gender dysphoric kids. So they didn't act legislatively, which we've seen so far in the United States. It's mostly been legislatively, the states that are becoming sanctuary states versus the states are saying, we're not going to do this to minors. But I like the way that the Florida, physicians acted. They just said, this is not how we're going to practice medicine in the state of Florida, which is great because, the doctors are stepping up and saying, this isn't medicine. We're not going to do it. And, when you pass laws, laws can always be changed, So, there's a new sheriff comes to town and the law that was good becomes bad law, or, whatever. So I think it's really we're going to have to get back to teaching real medical ethics in medical schools. Medical students come out of medical school and at best they've had like a little, a wave over a medical ethics kind of a course versus it, being a really serious part of, medical training. But you have to be careful what you ask for, because if today's doctors are teaching medical ethics to medical students, they're coming out ready to, offer gender affirming care. So, medical ethics is only as good as whatever the framework is. And in the paper I wrote for GenSpec, I kind of lay out some different ethical theories. There's, utilitarianism. So if you're familiar with Peter Singer, he's a big utilitarian ethicist, the greatest good for the greatest number. So we don't have an unlimited amount of healthcare dollars. So we have to make sure that we can service the most people versus the individual who might need something that's very costly. They might say, well, we're not going to spend this, a lot of money on 12 people that have this rare disease. Which I don't think is a good ethical theory. The most recent one, which is pretty common today, I think if medical students are learning any ethical theory, is what we call the Georgetown mantra. It was written by two professors at Georgetown, and it's non-maleficence, don't do harm, beneficence, do good, autonomy, the patient has autonomy, and justice. Well, those words are meaningless today because the trans people would say, to do harm is to not affirm, and to do justice and allow the patient to have autonomy is you walk into the doctor and you say, I feel like I'm a person that should be an amputee. I want my healthy limbs cut off. And, I'm an autonomous agent and, you're my service provider. So we have to get back to having, real shared values and meaning to those words of justice and autonomy. Because sure, we all want autonomy. We don't want our doctors to force us to do things we don't want to do. We want to be part of the decision-making practice. But again, the doctor has to be aimed at health, normal function, health.
Yeah, so there has to be some gatekeeping. I mean, this whole thing about gatekeeping, I'm just thinking about it, right? Like, you can have your autonomy, but there has to be somewhere where there's like, that's a no, right? Like that's what we know it's going to be, not for promoting your health. And in this age of, like affirming whatever, right? Like this gatekeeping function. Or the name of justice, like you said. I saw even reproductive justice. I was looking that up beforehand because I was wondering, well, they think surrogacy is reproductive justice, and it seems like it's getting tied together. It
absolutely is. And, there's a whole new field in law, law. So lawyers are now being trained to be reproductive justice lawyers. And what does reproductive justice means? It means, gay men can rent wombs from women and buy eggs from women and have babies. I'm not bashing on gay men, but, I'm sorry, there's nothing medically wrong. There's no reason why we take a woman who has no medical need to take fertility drugs, to undergo procedures, medical procedures. There's no need for that. So, yeah, and I'm on a listserv. It's, a lot of reproductive justice people, and I just got the syllabus list, all the recommending reading for reproductive justice classes. And there's no reproductive justice. But and I feel bad, Leslie, because I really wanted to listen to your last podcast where you did, dip your toe into the abortion debate. But one of the even though Hippocrates way back when said, the doctor should not do these things, the saving grace is still we have rights of conscience for healthcare workers. So, a doctor can't be forced to do an abortion or to, prescribe lethal, drugs to end your life. A doctor can't be forced to offer, a gay couple to, have a surrogate pregnancy. You can't be forced because you have rights of conscience. But those are being eroded in the transgender debate.
Yes.
Doctors are being told they're not following the professional guidelines. They're out of step with the Pediatric Endocrine Society. They're out of step with the American Pediatric, Academy. So, rights of conscience used to sort of was that kind of gatekeeper, Deborah, so that doctors who, in good conscience, couldn't do those things were not ostracized, did not lose their, practice, did not get kicked out of the hospital and lose their privileges.
It seems like at some point, there must have been a line crossed between medicine for health, for improving of the body from, in states of illness or sickness or malformation, and then medicine for lifestyle. And I don't know if that is something in the modern era, if that's something that's always been with us to some extent, depending on what technology was available. But it seems like we can draw a line between medications like birth control, which is a lifestyle medication. It's your body's functioning perfectly fine. We're going to alter its function in order to improve your convenience. Even psychiatric medications to some extent could be lumped into that. Like, we're going to use these medications in order to pacify or change something about a person's behavior in order to make them fit in better with themselves or the world around them. But they have the effects are going to be on behavior and lifestyle, not on physical health. And in fact, these medications, both of those medications, have a toll on physical health that you are choosing to sacrifice some part of your physical health in order to gain some kind of lifestyle function. And plastic surgery, same thing. Like, we're gonna take the time to recover from breast implants or facial surgeries, or even just Botox. We're gonna take a little hit on our body, or even a big hit on our body's physical health, in order to get some kind of perceived aesthetic benefit. And so, how does that square with medical ethics? I mean, as a bioethics scholar, how do those things square with doctors' ethical codes?
Yeah, well, it's not medicine, so we'll have to call it something. I mean, now the new craze is what, Ozempic, right? It's a lifestyle. I don't want to diet. I don't want to exercise. I want, to lose 12% of my body weight in the next 6 months or something. It's not medicine. So we can call it whatever it is, but I don't think it should be reimbursed as healthcare insurance. It's not medically indicated. We have all these med spas that people go to. You don't have to get your Botox from a doctor. You can go to these, spas that set up a shingle and, but I don't see, we need plastic surgery because we need plastic surgery for people who really need it medically.
Right.
Pediatrics, we had children born with cleft lips and cleft palates. They needed a plastic surgeon to repair that. Otherwise, they couldn't eat. And they wouldn't thrive because they couldn't get we don't want to feed children through a tube in their belly for their whole life because, they have a cleft palate or a cleft lip. Burn patients benefit from, plastic surgery, people that have been massively disfigured because of accidents and trauma. But that's medicine because, again, it's aimed at restoring function, restoring normal function. So I think I don't see that we can ever put the plastic surgery genie back in the bottle. But I'm not going to call it medicine. And I'm not going to lobby that our healthcare dollars, which we don't have, unlimited resources. We do want to be able to provide health care for people that really have needs. So I don't want to see my healthcare dollars being spent, so somebody can get a nose job.
I do wonder where, and there's a place for it. It's like anything, like there's a place for something and then it goes too far. But I think about, I went into a business school and I remember at the time there were more people from the MDs and whatever coming and getting MBAs. There were nurses. There was this, we need to professionalize like medical, like hospitals and this and that. And it's inefficient. And I feel like there were probably some pluses of that in terms of things that people learned there. But I also wonder if this got people more into, we need to make such and such a profit center in the hospital, or we need to, oh, we have this thing we can do. Are there, business, you're often thinking we have this widget. What else can we make the widget do? So I don't know if that brought in more thinking of like, let's use the plastic surgery for that because we can make money. So I don't know how much bringing in business thinking, again, there's probably a place for it, might have led to these like gross like applications of particular things that had their right place. And this kind of drive for, centers of a hospital that make more money. Like, I don't know if that was the downside of sort of professionalizing and bringing business thinking into, healthcare organizations.
Well, I think that was certainly part of it. I mean, obviously hospitals in, particular, let's use hospitals example, they have to be able to cover their costs.
Yeah.
Or else they go out of, and those are practical things. Same with the doctor just running his busy, medical practice in his office. He's got to be able to pay, his staff that works for him. He's got to be able to keep his equipment in his office updated and upgraded, so people have to make money. But, we saw, I saw certainly in the 20 years that I was always in hospital nursing. Nursing became, medicine became by committee. Hospital lawyers got involved because they wanted to mitigate, chance of, legal action, legal, problems. CEOs of the hospital got involved. Everybody, so medicine became, this thing that doctors used to do, to now we're delivering healthcare. We're delivering it. And it was delivered by committee. And you've got to keep the insurance companies happy. You've got to keep the lawyers happy. You've got to keep the CEOs, the executives of the hospital. How many times you go to the doctor now, within, hours after I have a doctor's visit at Kaiser, I get a customer satisfaction survey, because we got to please the customers. We're in this business now of pleasing customers, and we're no longer a professional. We're just providing services, in exchange for money.
Yeah. It's interesting, the marriage of business and medical care. Deborah, I can speak a little bit to that question as well. I worked in, I spent 5-ish years working in one medical clinic, primary care clinic, and then 6 in another. So a total of 11 years, putting myself through undergrad and then again later on and working in medicine again, and sort of administrative and medical assisting kind of positions. And when I worked at this one medical center, it was a primary healthcare clinic in Texas. One of the things that really disturbed me that happened while I was there was that when we would get a new piece of equipment, like we got a DEXA scanner for bone density, we got a neuropathy, some kind of neuropathy machine. What would happen was all of the medical assistants and administrative people would have to comb through patient charts and look for the right combination of diagnosis and insurance, and then call all of those patients in and let them know that we were recommending a new treatment for them. It was like, we're going to maximize returns on this equipment. And it felt really unethical to me. Like, if you thought that this person needed this thing, then it was your job to have already recommended that for them, whether you were the one selling it or not. And the fact that now you have this and you're going to go by not just diagnosis, but also ability to get coverage, and you're going to maximize who you can bring in for that thing. And that was just a glimpse at a family-owned, small, good doctor, nice place. It was not like some horrible place. And so seeing that there was so shocking to me. It was one of the nails in the coffin for me on my trust in the medical system.
And you see that with pharmacology as well. I don't know if any of you guys saw the show Dopsick. When you work in, the reps for the drug companies, they'll visit the doctor's office, they'll come to the hospitals, they'll leave pens and pads of paper and all kinds of widgets and samples because they're trying to get you to either prescribe their medication or whatever. The nurses loved it when, the pharmacy guys would come in, they buy us all pizza lunch.
Yep.
Because they'd want to, talk to us about a new product that, they were hoping that we would then recommend to the doctors, let's use that. The same with medical equipment. They have a new IV machine that delivers IV fluids or a new bed, all the equipment that you have to have. It's trying to sell stuff. It's marketing. It's giving free stuff. It's giving perks. It's, please, buy this. But, Dopesick was great because it was, how all these, innocent people had pain. They got, addicted to a new drug that was billed and sold as non-addictive and even FDA approved as a non-addictive drug. And in fact, Michael Keaton, who played one of the heroes in the film, a little small town doctor, he himself got addicted on it. And it was just, horrible. It was, it was the family that's all behind the trans stuff, one of those big pharma families that's funding the trans stuff, and they lost their lawsuit, but it didn't damage the family. The family was, didn't have to cough up millions of dollars in the lawsuit. The drug company did, but it's everywhere, and it's not medicine.
No, I definitely saw that as well working in medical clinics. We as the staff could pick a restaurant we wanted to eat from any day of the week, every day of the week, and then call reps to see who was free that day and let them know that, we were basically selling time with the doctor in order to get our lunch paid.
Wow.
I'm not even kidding.
Incentives.
It was crazy. We could have a catered lunch every single day, and we'd sell the time with the doctor. And so the doctor would have to entertain the two very good looking, well-dressed pharmaceutical reps that would come in with their briefcase full of samples and
Spokes
pamphlets
models.
and pens. They were beautiful models.
They're always spokes models. Yeah.
They were spokes models. And so they would get 30 minutes with the doctor. They would sit in his closed room with him while he signed charts and they talked to him. And that would be the extent of the education he would get on the medication that he was going to then start prescribing to everyone. Yeah, saw it over and over.
I'm sure they had their own studies of their own medicine, right?
Yeah.
Probably not other studies.
It's their brochures. Yeah. Yeah. Sales pitch.
Yeah. And they do it, in pediatrics, we had one, formula that all the babies in the hospital got because there was some sweet deal we got. So all the babies, and then, then they go, the mother takes the baby home and the mother's going to buy that formula because that's what the hospital served the baby. Same with diapers. We only had one. We didn't have Huggies and Peppers. It was one. So in the hopes that when those parents go home with the baby, this is what the hospital used. So I'm going to, it's good enough for, my baby at home.
Yeah. That brand loyalty.
Wow.
Get them started on it. Yeah, it's fascinating. There's so many things I feel like we could discuss in the realm of medical ethics, and an hour just doesn't even come close. But Deborah and Jen, are there any other thoughts that you guys have that you want to bring up before we close out this hour with Jennifer?
I think this would be too long, but maybe we have another conversation because I'm just so interested in your personal connection to medical ethics, Jennifer. Like, what clearly this, like, you emanate this. Like, I almost want to cry. It's like very, very moving, and I'm just thinking, like, how did like your concern and care about? But I think that's probably a long question. I don't want to cut you off when we have 2 minutes, but I want you to know I'm thinking that. Wondering it.
I could ask, just say briefly, because I did see this shift happening when I was working in the hospital. And because I was mostly working with parents of sick children, knowing that parents had to make decisions on the fly that they'd have to live with for the rest of their life, whether they did this or they didn't do that, and always wondered, did they choose wise? And, I was just really concerned because I want parents who have to make decisions for their children's health to feel like they have all the information that they need to make the best decision for the health of their child, versus a doctor saying, well, what do you want? I don't care. You want this, you want that, it's your choice. Or I want you to be happy. I want you to be a satisfied customer. So that's when I thought, and when I started, as a new nurse, we had doctors and patients. The last hospital I worked with, we were instructed to call our patients our clients and our customers. And we were deliverers of healthcare. We were part of a healthcare team. Instead of, no, I'm a nurse and this is my patient. I'm going to take care of my patient. I'm not part of a team. This isn't my client. They're not my customer.
Wow, it's such a shift in perspective.
Yeah.
Jennifer, where can people find your work, and what recommendations do you have?
Well, the website of the organization is cbc-network.org, and we have tons of resources there, and all links to all of our free documentaries. I'm mostly active on X, so I'm at Jennifer Lahl, so I hang out there quite a bit.
Wonderful, wonderful. I recommend watching your films. You've got, is it 3 now films?
I have 11.
11.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Mine goes to 11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I guess I've only
three,
seen 3.
I have 3 in the transgender space, but I
Okay.
have quite a few on egg donors, surrogates, donor conceived people, 1 on assisted suicide, so I've been
Wow.
making films for a long time.
I'm
People
gonna
will
have
watch
to-
movies.
I get to dive back in and see more content then. I was just scratching the surface, so I look forward to watching the rest of them.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation, Jennifer. It's really been a delight to have you, and thank you to everybody who joined us in the chat. And yeah, I'll give you the final word, Jennifer, if there's anything you want to add that we maybe missed covering.
No, I don't think so. I think I just want to apologize for the technology issues I had on my end. So, and I hope you guys have me back again.
I think we'd love to have you back. And yeah, technology is just one of those annoying things. These Zoom calls, it's like the I love the seance example. Have you ever seen the seance meme? It's like comparing Zoom. Is there someone trying to join?
Let's go back to the tin can with the string.
Yeah.
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 Thank you. And thank you for the super chat, Andrew Joyner. People always accuse me of cutting us off with when I end the live stream. I promise I always finish talking and then hit end, but I have no idea when it's going to cut off. So it probably kind of goofy, but we'll see y'all next week. And